You talked about a serious character you called Mike Mulhern in the book, and how your meeting with him in 1986 led to you being severely entangled in a situation. Who was Mike Mulhern, and what happened with you and him?
Well, Mike Mulhern was a member of the La M, the Mexican Mafia. It's the prison gang here in California that, I mean, they absolutely ran the prisons with the iron hand. And he was friends with several Hells Angels. And he came to me and said, hey, look, one of your Ventura members is in prison in Arizona and owes us $10,000. And, we're giving you guys the opportunity to pay us, because if you don't pay us, we're gonna hit this guy on the yard. We're gonna kill him. And I had about 19, 20 conversations with him. They said the recorder only worked twice on all those conversations. Yeah, right. And I wound up getting indicted for ordering the murder of this guy who had nothing to do with this, other than we knew him and he knew us. But they said, if you don't pay this $10,000 tax, we're going to hit this guy. And they had me on tape basically saying, I'm not paying you guys nothing. If you kill him, it's between you guys. And they used that, but the jury figured it out what was going on. And, did I break a law? I didn't break a legal law. And I told the jury this. I looked at the jury and I said, perhaps I broke a moral law, by allowing this. But I said, hey, you know what? This is the world we live in. I go, the guy was a drug dealer. He was a part-time pimp. And he had got himself in a jam with these guys. And, wasn't up to me to save him by paying the bill or by telling the police. It had nothing to do with me. And like I said, the jury agreed with me. They found me not guilty. But, I was looking at life on one count and 10 years on another count. I'll tell you, the sentences that the government, not only the federal government, but even the state, I've been indicted for major crimes. 1986, I was looking at life in 20. I got indicted again in 2001. I was looking at several hundred years. It was a 59 count state racketeering charge that collapsed really under its own weight. And then again, they got me in 2011, and this time it was a 8 count indictment, but the last 3 counts were mandatory minimums of life. That's that, the feds put that mandatory minimum on you, and the judge has no discretion. He's got to give you life if you get found guilty. So it's a tough road. I mean, I was disappointed. My daughter was representing me in that case, and we talked it over. And they offered me to give me time for house. I was on house arrest 2 years, and then they were talking about an additional year in prison in Texas at La Tuna prison. And you know what? I wound up taking the plea because I was looking at 3 life sentences, man. And, coming home in 12 months is a lot more attractive than possibly spending 3 life sentences in a federal prison.
Right. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So you in the 86 case, which is a federal case.
Correct.
You went to trial.
I did.
And you won at trial against the feds.
Correct.
So you did what people still to this day, and I've been hearing it all my life. Oh, you can't beat the feds. You can't beat the feds. And you beat the feds. Well, I did. At trial.
I did, and it's very difficult to beat the feds. But I'm going to tell you something else. There's a caveat that goes along with that. I beat the feds. I had probably one of the top 10 lawyers in the United States, a guy named Barry Tarlow and Mark Haney, and another guy was an associate, Robert Sheehan. And this is 1986, and I want to tell you what the case cost me in 1986. It cost the club $500,000. That's 1986 standards, something like that.
That'd be like 800,000 now.
Yeah, at least maybe $1 million, And so how do you fight the feds? you got to have as much money as them to fight the
Yes.
feds. And I did beat the odds, but they stack it on you so heavy. They have a 98% conviction rate, but that's because everybody pleads out. And
Everybody
that's
pleads out.
including myself now. I thought I
Right.
waited out. I was almost 70 years old, and I thought I could
This
go
was in the 2001,
2011.
2011 rather.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
So, and you had a public defender in that one.
well, I had my daughter assisting him. I hired a public defender so I could use the you could use funds from the government for your private investigator. They would appoint private investigators and paralegals. So Mike Mayock was appointed by the court, but my daughter was co-counsel. My daughter's a pretty top-notch lawyer, and she wasn't confident. She goes, "Look, Dad, you're almost 70. You're looking at 3 mandatory 3 life sentences. I don't want you spending the rest of your life in prison and having that on my conscience." She goes, "Let's take the plea bargain." She goes, "I think I can get you out of here." So I got credit for 2 years on house arrest. I spent 2 years on house arrest, and I went to Tuna, Texas, and spent a year in prison there. It was a low-level prison, but it was run like a medium security place. There was a lot of older prisoners there that had the politics of prison, but maybe didn't have the anger to run the prison like they did when they were younger. There's a lot of high-profile guys there just coming off 20, 25-year sentences. But, it was a low-level prison. But I also have to tell you, 2 of the cartel factions were in there together, and they were fighting. And just before I got there, they had one cartel faction had killed 5 of the other guys simultaneously on the yard. They synchronized their watches and hit 5 guys at once. So there was still some danger on. You could feel the tension in that yard when you walked it. Like I said, it was a low-level prison, but there was a lot of tension on that yard. But I think Texas prisons are that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And they definitely sent you that far to make sure you were as isolated as possible and potentially would come into contact with some old rivals. So I think you said that there were a pretty decent amount of Mongols. There was a strong clique of Mongols in that.
It was the Banditos, but there were also Mongols in there.
Oh, yeah. So the Banditos, right?
The Banditos were in there, but there were Mongols in there. And, it's interesting. I mentioned earlier that, there's always a moratorium on violence with the bike clubs. I actually hung out with Banditos. I celled up with one of their leaders. And I actually used to walk the yard with a Mongol from Southern California that him and I had been in conflicts on the street, but, we had put that stuff aside now.
Right. Did the fact that the Aryan Brotherhood was as far as white inmates were concerned, they were the power structure, and thus when the outlaws came in, they had to kind of fall under that kind of jurisdiction.
Well, it's interesting. The 2, like the Black Guerrilla family had their own thing going on. I don't know if you're familiar with them in California.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, they had their own thing going on. And the AB and the Mexican Mafia, I would say, the outlaw biker kind of answered to both those factions. And the thing was, we had no politics on the yard because we wanted to get home so we could ride our motorcycles again. The AB, the Black Guerrilla family, and the Mexican Mafia, they operate out of the prisons. That's where they're the strongest.
That's their base, yeah?
Yeah, that's their base. So, were we subservient? I don't want to say we were subservient, but we weren't running anything in prison. The Mexican Mafia and the AB and the Black Guerrilla family were running everything. The Mexican Mafia has a much bigger population in California prison because of all the Serenos in Southern California.
Yeah,
those guys are always going to prison, and they answer to the Mexican Mafia. And like every Sereno gang in Southern California, pays a tribute to the MA, and if they don't pay, they got a problem when they hit
Heads
the yard.
literally roll.
Yeah, they got a problem when they hit the yard. So, did we have a problem with any of those gangs? No, we never had a problem with them, but we were no challenge to them at all.
Right.